Dante Moretti, the most notorious mafia boss in New York, stepped out of the shower, his robe still wet, and said to me, "Sleep with me, or regret it forever." It wasn't a threat. It was a sentence. I, Lena Voss, an investigative journalist sneaking in to expose him, froze on the spot. His eyes were cold as steel, but inside them burned something far more dangerous than a gun recognition. He knew who I was, and he had been waiting for this moment every second, every photo, every breath. He tilted his head slightly, a faint smile brushing his lips. That night, I escaped. But the next morning, the underground networks were flooded with a photo of me kissing him captioned "Mistress of Dante Moretti." This wasn't an accident. He had turned the hunter into the prey and the investigative journalist into the exposed lover. I was 28, sitting in the dark of my tiny apartment staring at a stack of unpaid bills when my editor called. "Lena, you want the big story? Get me something on Dante Moretti, the mafia boss. Nobody's touched him yet." My heart sank. I'd been scraping by as a journalist chasing leads on petty crimes, but this was a death wish. Still, I said yes. I always said yes. Growing up in a rundown trailer park, you learn to take risks to survive. I wasn't glamorous, never had been. My clothes were secondhand, my hair a plain brown mess I tied back. People looked past me, assumed I was nobody, but I had grit and I had a knack for finding truth where others saw shadows. That's how I ended up sneaking into Dante Moretti's mansion at 2 a.m., heart pounding like a drum. I'd bribed a guard with my last $200 to get past the gate. The place was a fortress, marble floors, gold chandeliers, the kind of wealth that screamed power. I was there for evidence, anything to prove Dante's money laundering schemes. My camera hung heavy around my neck as I crept through the halls, avoiding security lights. I found his office, but it was too clean, too perfect. No papers, no files, just a locked drawer I couldn't crack. Then I heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate. I ducked into the nearest room, a bathroom all sleek tile and mirrors. I crouched behind a massive clawfoot tub, barely breathing. The door swung open. My stomach dropped. There he was, Dante Moretti, in nothing but a black bathrobe, hair wet from a shower water dripping down his chest. He was 38, broad-shouldered, with a face carved from stone, sharp-jawed, dark eyes that could cut glass. The air changed when he walked in, like the room was holding its breath. He didn't see me at first. I thought I was safe. Then his gaze locked onto the mirror, catching my reflection. I froze. He didn't yell or call for guards. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low, rough, like gravel. "Sleep with me, or regret it forever." I almost choked. My mind raced. He thought I was someone else, a call girl maybe sent by his staff. My hands shook as I stood clutching my camera like a shield. "I'm not who you think," I said, a voice barely steady. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't move. Up close, he was terrifying, not because of his size, but because of the way he looked at me, like he could see every secret I'd ever buried. I forced a smile, playing along, mumbling something about a mix-up. He didn't buy it, but he let me go, his stare burning into my back as I stumbled out. I thought that was the end of it. I got out, made it home, collapsed on my couch, heart still racing. But the next morning, my phone buzzed with a notification from a dark web forum. A photo. Me kissing Dante in that bathroom. I didn't remember kissing him. I had been too panicked to notice anything but survival. The caption read, "Mistress of Dante Moretti." My name was plastered everywhere. My cheap apartment address, my job, my life. I felt sick. The world thought I was his lover, not a journalist. I wanted to scream to disappear. Instead, I gripped my coffee mug so hard it cracked, the sting of hot liquid on my hand, grounding me. I wasn't going to let this break me. Hey, if this is hitting you like it hit me, take a second. Grab your phone like this. Video, drop a comment below, and hit subscribe to my channel. It means the world to share this story with you, to know you're out there listening. Let's keep walking this road together. Okay, the scandal didn't just ruin my reputation, it painted a target on my back. I started noticing things, a black sedan idling outside my apartment, a stranger lingering too long at the corner store. One night, I came home to find my door ajar, my papers scattered across the floor. Nothing was stolen, but a single photo was pinned to my fridge with a knife, me walking to work oblivious. I didn't call the cops. What was the point? They'd never touch Dante's world. Instead, I packed a bag, my hands steady, despite the fear clawing at my chest. I wasn't running, not yet, but I needed to be smarter, sharper. I slipped the photo into my pocket, a reminder that someone was watching, waiting for me to slip. That night, my phone rang at 3 a.m., unknown number. I answered, my voice sharp. Who is this? A pause. Then his voice, Dante's, calm, like he was ordering coffee. Your life is already mine, Lena. Don't fight it. I hung up, my hands trembling. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I was in a cab heading back to his mansion. I wasn't thinking straight, just pure anger, the kind that makes your blood hum. I banged on his gate until a guard let me in. Dante was waiting in his study, leaning against a desk, wearing a tailored suit that made him look untouchable. I threw my phone at him, the photo still open. Take it down, I said. Now. He didn't flinch, just picked up my phone, glanced at it, and laughed a low, bitter sound. I'm protecting you, he said. If I didn't claim you, someone else would have killed you by now. I didn't believe him. I wanted to slap him. But then he slid a folder across the desk. Photos. Dozens of them. Me at the coffee shop I went to every morning. Me walking home from work. Me as a kid, maybe 10, in a faded dress at a county fair. My breath caught. What is this? I asked. He leaned closer, his voice softer now. You saved my life once, Lena. 10 years ago. You don't remember, do you? I shook my head, backing away. You're insane. But his words stuck like a splinter I couldn't pull out. 10 years ago, I was 18, living in a haze after a kidnapping gone wrong. I'd been grabbed by mistake, held for 3 days, blindfolded before they let me go. The memories were blurry, locked away somewhere I didn't touch. Dante said I'd pulled him from a burning car during an ambush, but I couldn't see it, couldn't feel it. All I felt was the weight of his stare, like he was waiting for me to become someone I wasn't. Before I could process it, one of his men burst in, a wiry guy with a scar across his cheek. Boss, we got a problem. Rico's been talking to the feds. Dante's face didn't change, but his hand tightened on the desk, the wood creaking under his grip. Handle it, he said, his voice ice. The man nodded and left, but not before shooting me a look like I was the problem. I stood there, my pulse racing, realizing I'd just heard something I wasn't supposed to. Dante didn't look at me, just pointed to the door. Go to your room, he said, like I was a child. I didn't argue, not because I was scared, but because I knew I'd just stepped deeper into his world and there was no turning back. As I walked down the hall, a maid blocked my path. Her arms crossed, a sneer twisting her face. She was older, her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. You think you're special, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. He keeps girls like you until he's bored, then they disappear. She stepped closer, her breath sour. I've seen it before. I didn't flinch, just adjusted my bag on my shoulder. My eyes locked on hers. Then you've seen what happens to people who talk too much, I said, my voice low. She froze, her lips parting, but no words came out. I brushed past her, my heart pounding, but my steps didn't falter. I wasn't here to play their games, but I'd play if I had to. He wouldn't let me leave. For your safety, he said, but it felt like a cage. The mansion was suffocating, polished floors, locked doors, cameras in every corner. His men called me Bathrobe Pet behind my back, snickering when I passed. At a dinner with his allies, the wives dripping in diamonds and venom leaned in close. One with perfect red lipstick smirked. From reporter to call girl, all it took was one photo. I gripped my fork, my knuckles white, but I didn't speak. I just looked at her steady until she glanced away. Dante watched from across the table, silent, his face unreadable. You want to leave? He said later when we were alone. Go ahead. Try. I didn't. Not because I was scared, but because I needed answers. One afternoon, I was in the library pretending to read when Elena Costa walked in. She was 24, all sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, Dante's ex who still lingered like a ghost. She didn't sit, just stood there twirling a wineglass, her smile cold. You know he'll tire of you, she said, her voice like silk over a blade. You're just a toy he'll break. I set my book down, my hands steady, and met her gaze. Maybe I said, but I'm not the one chasing shadows. Her smile faltered just for a second before she turned and left. I exhaled, realizing I'd just made an enemy. But something about her words stung, not because they were true, but because they echoed my own doubts about why Dante kept me close. Days turned into weeks. I was stuck, a guest who wasn't a guest. I started noticing things, whispers among the guards, tension in the air. One night, I found a hidden door behind a bookcase in Dante's study. My hands shook as I pushed it open. Inside was a room, small, dimly lit walls covered in photos. All of me. Me at 15, laughing with my mom at a diner. Me last month buying groceries. A chill ran through me. This wasn't just surveillance. It was obsession. When Dante found me there, I didn't back down. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice sharp. He didn't flinch. "I thought you were her," he said. "My fiancée. She died 10 years ago, but you're different. More dangerous." I laughed, bitter. "You're in love with a ghost." His eyes darkened and he stepped closer, close enough I could smell his cologne, sandalwood sharp. "No," he said. "I'm in love with the woman who makes me lose control." My heart stopped. Not because of his words, but because of the way he said them, like he was confessing a sin. I wanted to hate him, to run, but something in his voice held me there, a crack in the armor of a man who didn't break. I turned away. My hands clenched and left the room. But I felt his eyes on me long after I was gone. One evening, I overheard two of Dante's men in the courtyard, their voices low but sharp. "She's trouble," one said, spitting on the ground. "Rico says she's got a list, names, dates, enough to bury us all." I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow. I didn't have a list, but the fact they thought I did was enough to get me killed. The other man laughed, a harsh sound. "Let her try, she won't make it out the gate." I slipped away, my shoes silent on the stone, but my mind was racing. I needed evidence, something real to protect myself. That night, I started memorizing faces, voices, anything that could give me an edge. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was hunting. The next morning, I woke to whispers outside my door. Two maids, thinking I was asleep, were gossiping. "She's trouble," one said, her voice low. "Rico says she's got dirt on the boss, enough to bring him down." I sat up, my heart pounding. I didn't have dirt, not yet, but Rico clearly thought I did. I slipped out of bed, pressed my ear to the door. "He's planning something," the other maid said. "Says she won't last the week." I pulled back, my hands cold. Rico wasn't just a threat to Dante, he was coming for me. I needed to move faster, find something real to use against him before he made his move. Things got worse. Rico Falcone, Dante's right-hand man, started circling like a shark. He was 41, slick with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. One night, a video hit the dark web, me leaving Dante's room at 4 a.m. I'd been there, arguing, demanding answers, but the footage was edited to look like something else. The rumors spread, Lena Voss, FBI spy. The next day, I was cornered in the garage by 3 of Rico's men. They didn't touch me, at first, just laughed, called me a rat. Then one grabbed my arm, twisted it. I didn't scream. I stared him down, my voice low. "You're making a mistake." He laughed until Dante appeared. He didn't say a word, just looked at them. They let me go, scattered like roaches. That night, I found a note slipped under my door. No signature, just 5 words in sharp black ink. "You're not one of us." I crumpled it, my hands shaking, but not from fear, from rage. I'd been underestimated my whole life, dismissed as the trailer park girl who'd never amount to anything. But this was different. These people didn't just underestimate me, they wanted me gone. I tucked the note into my pocket next to the photo from my fridge. They were piling up, these little threats, each one a spark waiting to ignite. I wasn't going to wait for the fire. I started searching the mansion at night, every corner, every drawer, looking for something to turn the tables. In the quiet of one sleepless night, I found a small key taped under a dresser in my room. It was old, tarnished, not like the sleek locks of the mansion. My hands trembled as I held it, wondering what had opened. I waited until the house was still, then slipped into the basement, where I'd seen a rusty lockbox tucked behind some crates. The key fit. Inside was a single letter, yellowed, addressed to "My Savior" in Dante's handwriting. It described a girl 18 pulling him from a burning car, her hands blistered but steady. My hands shook as I read it, the words stirring something deep like a memory I couldn't grasp. I folded it carefully, slipped it into my sleeve, and returned to my room, my heart heavy with questions I wasn't ready to ask. But Dante wasn't done. In his office, he grabbed my face, his hand cold against my skin. "Are you playing me?" he asked. I yanked away, furious. "You're the one who caged me here." His hand came down, a sharp slap across my cheek. The room went silent. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. "You just killed the last chance I had to trust you," I said, my voice steady. He didn't answer, just turned away, his shoulders tense. Hours later, I was dragged to the wine cellar, locked inside. I heard his voice through the door, "Keep her there. If she's a spy, I'll deal with her myself." I sank to the floor, the cold stone biting into my knees. I wasn't scared, I was angry, angry enough to fight. In that cellar, I found a loose panel in the wall. Behind it, a USB drive. I didn't have a laptop, but I had my phone. When I plugged it in, I saw files. Bank records, emails, proof Rico was skimming from Dante's empire, selling secrets to rivals. My hands shook, not from fear, but from hope. I had to get this to Dante. The cellar had a security camera. I held up my phone, showing the files, praying he'd see it. Hours later, the door opened. Not Dante, Rico. He had a gun. "You're done," he said. I didn't move, just stared at him, my voice calm. "You're the one who's done." The lights flickered, then darkness. I wasn't alone in the dark for long. A guard, one I didn't recognize, slipped in through a side door, his face half hidden by a cap. He didn't speak, just handed me a burner phone and pointed to the camera. "He's watching," he whispered, then vanished. I clutched the phone, my fingers numb, and dialed the only number saved in it. Dante answered on the first ring. "Lena," he said, his voice tight. "What do you have?" I told him about the files, my words quick, precise. He didn't interrupt, but I heard his breathing change heavier, like he was holding back a storm. "Stay put," he said. "I'm coming." The line went dead, and I was alone again, the phone's screen glowing faintly in my hand, a lifeline in the dark. When the power came back, I heard gunfire, screams. I crouched, heart pounding, waiting for the end. But it was Dante who burst through the door. Blood on his shirt, his eyes wild. He dropped to his knees beside me, his hands shaking as he checked me for wounds. "I saw the files," he said. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer, just looked at him, at the man who'd locked me away, who'd hurt me, who was now begging. "If I ever hurt you again," he said, his voice breaking, "shoot me." I didn't know if I could forgive him, but in that moment I believed he meant it. For the first time, I saw the man behind the monster. The air in the mansion changed after that night. The guards avoided my eyes, their whispers quieter, now laced with something like fear. I wasn't just the bathrobe pet anymore. I'd outed Rico, saved Dante, and they knew it. But the victory felt hollow. At dinner, one of the older capos, a man with a face like weathered leather, raised his glass to me. "To the woman who brought down a traitor," he said. The room went quiet, everyone waiting for Dante's reaction. He didn't smile, just nodded his hand, brushing mine under the table. It wasn't affection, it was a promise, one I didn't fully understand. I squeezed his fingers back, not because I trusted him, but because I needed to feel something solid in a world that was slipping out of control. One morning, I found a small velvet box on my pillow. No note, no explanation. Inside was a silver locket, simple but heavy, with a tiny photo of a girl who looked like me, but younger, her eyes bright with defiance. My hands froze as I held it, the metal cold against my skin. I didn't know how it got there, but I knew it was from Dante. Later at breakfast, I caught him watching me, his eyes softer than I'd ever seen. I didn't ask about the locket, didn't wear it. Instead, I slipped it into my pocket next to the letter and the photo. It felt like a weight, not a gift. A reminder that he saw something in me I couldn't see myself. I avoided him all day, my chest tight with a feeling I couldn't name. The fallout came fast. Rico was dead, Dante's doing, I later learned. But the damage was done. The mafia world was buzzing, Dante Moretti controlled by a woman. Rico's last act was a fake will, claiming Dante had sold his empire for me. The Council of Families summoned him, their faces cold, their voices dripping with disdain. "Prove your loyalty," they said, "or die with her." I was there hidden in the shadows watching. They dragged me out, forced me to my knees. I looked at Dante, my heart in my throat. "Tell them you don't love me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He met my eyes, his face like stone. "I never loved her," he said. The words cut deeper than any slap. They took me away, his men, their hands rough on my arms. I didn't fight. I just walked, my head high, even as my chest ached. In the safe house they dumped me in, I found a laptop left on the table like a taunt. My fingers itched. I hadn't written a story in weeks, but I still had my skills. I hacked into Rico's old accounts, my hands flying over the keys, pulling up emails, bank transfers, proof he'd been playing everyone, Dante, the council, even the feds. I didn't hesitate. I sent it all to a dark web forum, anonymous, letting the truth spread like wildfire. Within hours, the council was scrambling, their accusations against Dante crumbling. I sat back, my hands trembling, not with fear but with power. I'd been invisible my whole life, but not anymore. I was Lena Voss and I was rewriting the game. But I wasn't done. I'd spent years as a journalist digging for truth. I wasn't going to stop now. From a safe house, I hacked into Rico's accounts, found the real files, proof he'd framed Dante, proof he'd betrayed the families. I leaked it all, every email, every transaction. The dark web exploded. The council called Dante back, their apologies stiff but real. He walked into that meeting a king again, but when he saw me, his eyes softened. "You saved me," he said, his voice low, "by making me lose you." I stepped closer, my hand brushing his. "No," I said. "I saved you by showing you who I am." For the first time, we weren't captor and captive. We were equals. Then Elena Costa came for me. Dante's ex-24, all sharp beauty and sharper hate. She grabbed me outside a diner, her men shoving me into a van. "You think love with a devil is real?" she hissed. They took me to a warehouse, tied me to a chair. She wanted a video me begging Dante, saying I never loved him. I refused. At first, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. But her knife pressed against my throat and I spoke, my voice flat. "I never loved you." The video spread like wildfire. I heard Dante's response before I saw him. A fire, literal flames consuming Elena's villa. He came for me, blood dripping from a gash on his arm, his eyes wild. "Dante, stop," I screamed. "You're killing yourself." He didn't listen, just kept coming like a man possessed. In the warehouse, Elena's men hesitated, their eyes darting between her and the flames outside. I saw my chance. I twisted my wrists, the ropes biting into my skin until I felt them loosen. Elena was pacing her gun, waving her voice shrill as she screamed orders. I didn't think, just acted. I lunged, knocking the gun from her hand. It skidded across the floor, and for a moment we were frozen, her eyes wide with shock. "You're nothing," she spat, but her voice shook. I didn't answer, just grabbed the chair I'd been tied to and swung it, catching her across the knees. She went down hard. The men didn't move. They were too busy watching the fire creep closer. Hearing Dante's name shouted outside. I stood over her, my chest heaving, and for the first time I felt untouchable. In the chaos, Elena raised her gun. I saw the flash, heard the shot. Dante stumbled, blood blooming on his chest. I don't know how I did it. Adrenaline maybe, but I broke free, grabbed a pipe, and swung. Elena fell, her eyes wide, lifeless. I dropped to Dante's side, my hands shaking as I pressed them to his wound. "Stay with me," I whispered. He smiled faint, his hand touching my face. "If regret has a face," he said, "it's you." I held him as the sirens grew louder, as the police swarmed. He pressed a USB drive into my hand, his empire's secrets enough to clear my name. "Live," he said. Then his eyes closed. The aftermath was a blur, cops' questions, flashing lights. I didn't cry, didn't break. I handed over the USB drive, watched them cart away Elena's body, her men cuffed and silent. But as they loaded Dante onto a stretcher, his hand limp, something in me cracked. Not because I loved him, not yet, but because he'd given me the one thing no one else ever had a chance to be seen. I stood there, the night air cold against my skin, and made a promise to myself. I'd tell this story not for him, but for me. For the girl who'd been invisible, who'd fought her way out of the dark. I slipped the drive into my pocket and walked away, my steps steady, even as the world burned behind me. Months later, I sat in a quiet cafe, my book half written, when a stranger slid into the booth across from me. He was nobody I recognized, but his hands were rough, like they'd held a gun too many times. He didn't look at me, just pushed a folded napkin across the table. "From someone who owes you," he said, then left. I opened it. A single line in Dante's handwriting: "You were never hers to take." My throat tightened, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing he was still out there, still watching. I tucked the napkin into my bag next to the locket and kept writing. Some debts don't need to be repaid, they just need to be remembered. I didn't see him again for years. I wrote a book, The Man Who Burned for Love, pouring everything into it: the fear, the betrayal, the strange, fierce love that grew between us. It sold millions, but I didn't care about the money. I cared about the truth. At a book signing in Chicago, the line stretched around the block. I was signing a copy, my hand steady, when I felt someone watching me. I looked up. A man older, in a dark coat, a scar peeking from his collar. His eyes met mine, and my breath caught. "Dante," he didn't speak, just smiled, then turned and walked away. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Some loves don't need chains to hold you. You've been there, haven't you? Felt invisible, judged, pushed down by a world that didn't see you. But you kept going, carried your heart through the fire. You were never small, never weak, just unseen until you weren't. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.